Dr. Michael Youssef is founder of the Church of the Apostles in Atlanta and host of the International Bible Teaching Broadcast Ministry Leading the Way. Dr. Youssef, it's an honor to welcome you to KCBI's All Teaching channel. Thank you and Leading the Way for being a key part of KCBI's Bible teaching lineup, providing sound teaching for our listeners twice a day on KCBI.
Well, we are honored with our partnership. Really am.
Well, we're excited to have you here.
Thank you.
You spent the first 18 years of your life in Egypt, where, as an
Right.
evangelical Christian, persecution was part of the experience. How were
Sure.
you and your family able to face it?
Well, when you are in it and you grow up in it, it's not a strange thing. It's a normal way of life. And you do not become aware of the fact that this is not normal until you leave and you look back. But growing up, most people, I think, don't realize that there are over 10 million Christians in Egypt. Uh, but generally speaking, we were a Christian subculture within the larger culture in the country. So most Christian families have basically a basic training for their children at home. Many have put their kids in Christian schools. So all of these things work together in churches, in homes, in order to equip the children to cope with a general, if it's not outright persecution, discrimination, and difficult workplace and education place and so on. And so I never thought that here I am, 50 plus years later, after leaving the Middle East, that I'm going to see this here in America, that I'm going to train my grandchildren to be equipped to face very similar and situations in schools and in society at large. And now this whole woke culture has become an issue that sadly, in order to avoid pressure and avoid the trouble of going to explaining, taking a stand against it, many churches, they bought into it wholeheartedly and even preaching it instead of explaining away what does that mean and why it's not really something that is biblical, and why not be afraid of taking a stand and defending the biblical worldview. And so I come full circle after 70 plus years of life.
How does that make you feel?
Well, it wasn't expected, certainly not 10, 20 years ago, but at the same time, I'm thankful to the Lord that I had that equipping in my early days and the understanding. So I'm equipping not just my grandchildren, but I'm equipping the children of my congregation and the families in my congregation. And I'm saying to them that there is a greater reward beyond your imagination, beyond your comprehension. This is new to the American culture. This is new to the Western civilization, really. I'm training them, and I'm grateful that I have that knowledge to be able to pass it on.
What would you say the first step should be for someone who recognizes this, perhaps in their own circle, in their own Christian circle? What should be the first step in combating it and reaching out to talk about it?
I think the first step they need to take is to read my book, Hope for This Present Crisis, because I do not skirt the crisis. I talk about it. I talk about its antecedent. I talk about its origin. I talk about where it came from, how we got here historically, go back well the way back to the 60s. And what brought us to this point where we are, and how some deception that has taken place along the way, and some lack of knowledge. And so, and I really mean this, and I'm not being flippant when I say people need to read the book. I'm not saying it's the only book out there, but at least It's a book that is a Christian book. That's a biblical worldview book coming from somebody who was born in Africa. I am uh, defending the truth because it is the truth that's at the stake here. It really is.
You outlined 7 steps for how people can deal with this present crisis. Can you give us just a
Yes.
snapshot of what you're recommending?
Sure. Well, in fact, I have the 7 steps. The 5 are bookend between 2. The first one is the truth, and the last one is the church. Because between those 2, there are 5 steps inside. They're very, very important. But those 2 are vitally important because you got to begin with the truth. See, the truth here is really what the issue is. When the truth is compromised, watered down, or even ignored altogether, as is the case in many of these issues, then we really don't have anything to talk about. We don't have any foundational principle to talk about. I always liken it to a football game. You have no rules, you have no boundaries for the field, you have no referees, and anybody can take the ball in any direction. I mean, imagine the chaos. And that's exactly when the truth is at stake here. It's a free-for-all, and it's total chaos. And then the rest of the steps that I talk about, education, I talk about the family, and so on, they in the end don't matter. But you got to start with the truth. And then I talk about the culture, and I talk about the society, I talk about the education system, and all those other things that are very, very important. But you've got to start with the truth. Then you go to the church. You see, this is where the conclusion has to be the Church of Jesus Christ. Once the church says, oh, I don't want to be disliked by culture, I want to be accepted by people, I want people to like me as a pastor, I don't want them to say, oh, I am bigoted, I'm this phobe and that phobe, and people start labeling me, and I just want people to like me, so I'm going to go along with it. Not only just not talk about it, but I'm only announce that I'm going to accept it and I'm going to embrace it. Then, why are we the Church of Jesus Christ? We might be just the church of the world, because the Church of Jesus Christ has to be distinguished and based and built upon the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that is the truth, the whole truth. For he said, I am the way, the truth, and the giver of eternal life. No one comes to the Father but by me. And once we water down the gospel, then really it's not the Church of Jesus Christ anymore.
That is powerful. Thank you, Dr. Michael Youssef, host of Leading the Way, for joining us today. The book, Hope for This Present Crisis, is a must-read in these challenging days. You can find it at leadingtheway.org or wherever books are sold. And join us for Dr. Michael Youssef and Leading the Way, mornings at 4 and evenings at 10, right here on 90.9 KCBI.